Hello, gurus. Hello, gurus. Welcome to this very special ACG. It's been a good morning. ACG live event. And this is going to be an exam walkthrough. And what we do during exam walkthroughs is we give you some intel about a exam, in this case, AWS Certified SysOps Administrator Associate. Give you some sample exam questions in the style of the exam. And we try to give you some tips and tricks that maybe will help you out. And for this live stream, my name's Scott Pletcher, by the way, we have a very special guest all the way from the UK. You know her, you love her. It is Faye Ellis, everyone.
Hello everyone, hi, it's lovely to be here. Thank you, Scott, for that wonderful introduction. I'm super happy to be here with everyone today, and I'm so excited that there's so many of you as well. So thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thank you. We have people from Ghana, Romania, Switzerland, Nigeria. Saw India in there, Japan in there. Welcome one and all. So hopefully this live stream will give you some tips and tricks, especially if you're interested in the SysOps Associate exam, which is a bit new. And we'll get into why that's a little bit different than maybe some previous AWS certification exams. So let's go on to what we're going to cover today. So first, we're going to go through some frequently asked questions that we hear a lot about. We're going to cover the brand new ACG course on this exam. We're going to go over some sample exam questions, and then we're going to have a demo, actually two demos. One is going to be the ACG exam labs, and the next is an ACG challenge lab. And then at the end, we're going to have plenty of time for your questions. So you can either chuck them in the chat, either on Twitch or YouTube, and they will get relayed to me. I'm kind of watching the YouTube live, so there may be a little bit of a lag. But anyway, please, if you have any questions, join in. This is most definitely an interactive session because that's how we learn much better. So without further ado, let's move right on along to some frequently asked questions. So Faye, tell us, if I was going to, oops, let me switch over here. If I was going to take this certification, where does this fit in the overall AWS certification landscape?
Well, that is a really good question, Scott, and we do get asked this an awful lot. If we could move to the next slide, please, we will get our answer. So the SysOps Administrator Associate, it is not an intermediate qualification. It's not a beginner qualification. It's actually an intermediate qualification. And before doing the SysOps Administrator, we actually recommend that you've already done either the Solutions Architect Associate and passed the exam, or that you've got at least 1 year's hands-on experience using AWS and working with AWS. And then, of course, once you've done the SysOps Administrator Associate certification, you can choose to go on and do the Developer Associate as well, which is very focused on DevOps tools. And then you'll have all 3 associate levels. Or you could go on and complete one of the specialties. For example, there's networking, security, machine learning, data analytics, databases as well. Or you could go ahead and challenge yourself to get one of the professional certs. And of course, we've got the DevOps Pro and Solutions Architect Professional as well. So that's kind of where it sits in the landscape of certifications. Could we move to the next slide, please?
Okay.
But if you're not sure which direction to take, which certification to go for, then don't worry, we've got you. You should check out our AWS Certification Guide, which is on YouTube. And one of our lovely moderators, Sophia, is going to add the link to our certification guide in the chat right now. And the great thing about this video is that it gives you a cert-by-cert breakdown of every AWS certification there is, including pathways to follow into the most common cloud roles. So Matthias, the presenter, will tell you which certifications to target if you want to find a role in DevOps, in security, big data, machine learning, architecture, or as a cloud dev as well.
Okay, very good. So some people in the Twitch are having a problem with Faye's audio. I wonder if we can maybe turn it up a little bit.
Apologies, is that a little bit better?
It seems, yeah, it seems some people are having problems with the audio there and some people are not.
Okay, I've moved it a little bit closer, so hopefully that's a bit better. But if we're getting any pops, then just let me know.
Yeah, a little bit better. Yeah, I think it was move the mic a little bit better, and if we can, maybe on the mix, we can turn her up. Yeah, much better. Okay, cool, very good.
Okay,
all right.
Thanks for letting us know.
All right, next question. What is the difference between the old AWS Certified SysOps Administrator exam and the new exam?
Oh, a very good question. Okay, so yeah, if we could move to the next slide, please, we'll get our answer. So the old exam was called SOA C01, and that was consisting of a set of multiple choice and multiple response questions. And of those questions, there was no partial scoring. So if you got a question partially right, say you got some of the questions, some of the answers identified correctly in the multiple response question, then you wouldn't get any marks at all. Whereas for the new exam, it's called SOA C02, and it also consists of a set of multiple choice, multiple response questions, but with the addition of practical exam labs. And that's the really interesting, really cool thing about this exam, is that you got fewer questions, and they've introduced this idea of the practical exam labs. And with the exam labs, you do get partial scoring, which is fantastic, because if you look at the tasks in the practical piece and you think, oh, I know how to do part of it, I don't know how to do the whole thing, well, just try and do it, try and do the bit that you know, and you will still get some partial marks as well. So yeah, definitely worth trying, even if you don't think that you know how to do everything.
Okay, very good, very good. So let's go on to the next question. How many questions in labs?
Very good question. This is very important to know. If we could move to the next slide, please. Well, you'll get 50 questions approximately, so it's fewer questions than in the previous exam. And when you first kick off the exam, when you're using the test taking software, it will tell you at the beginning how many questions you're going to get. And when I did the exam myself, I got 50 questions. And out of those questions, there's actually 15 unscored questions. And these are questions that don't actually count towards your score. So these are new questions that AWS they're trialing, they're testing them, and they're about them. But it doesn't. But they are not going to actually count against your score. Yeah, they're basically being evaluated by AWS. And they've always included unscored questions in the exam, but up until now they never told us how many. So it's really good to know that it's 15, and I actually think that's quite a lot. In addition to the questions, you've also got 3 practical exam labs. And these are the practical exam labs where they give you a task to complete, and you have to complete it either in the AWS console, or if you're comfortable with the command line, you've got the opportunity to use command line tools as well. And it might be something like configuring an S3 bucket, configuring some lifecycle rules, just configuring something within the console that you've learned in your preparation for the exam. And the exam labs are 20% of your total score. Passing score is 720 out of 1,000. And you get 180 minutes or 3 hours to complete everything. So you get loads of time to complete everything. And they recommend that you save 20 minutes at the end for each exam lab. So reserve a total of 1 hour to complete your exam labs. And that will be plenty of time to complete everything.
That's a long time. That's as long as the CSA Pro.
Yeah, a long time to focus, a long time to concentrate, but plenty of time as well. And if you finish early, you can review you can't review your questions actually, but that's another thing that you need to be aware of, because the exam comes in 2 parts. You can review your questions before you submit them, but once you submit your questions, you will not be able to, move between labs and questions. So you finish your questions, you review everything, hit submit, move on to your labs. There's no back and forth.
Wow, okay. Tell us about this new course, Faye.
Yep, so because there's a new exam, we've got a brand new course, and we've completely rebuilt the course from the bottom up, so that it's completely designed for the new exam. It includes loads of practical exercises throughout the course, so you get loads of hands-on experience in all the different technologies that you will need to focus on. We've also introduced what we call challenge labs, and you're going to see a demo of that later on. And they're basically a set of practical challenges, 3 or 4 different tasks that you need to complete. And in challenge mode, you will actually get a score at the end. So once you've finished the lab, you hit submit, and our back end will work out what did you do right and what did you do wrong, and we'll let you know at the end. And we've also got brand new exam simulator as well, with lots of questions. I've actually been working on new questions this week, so we're adding lots of questions all the time. And we've also got practical exam labs in the exam as well, and you won't get a score for that, or you won't get told what you did wrong for that. It will be similar experience to what you'll see in the exam. And the super exciting thing for everybody who's registered today is that we are really happy to be able to offer everyone attending the live stream a free 7-day trial. And our chat moderator, Sophia, is going to pop the link in the chat right now. So if you haven't already registered your details, make sure you do so, and we'll send you an invitation for a free 7-day trial in the next couple of days, which is going to give you full access to the entire course, including challenge labs, exams, all of the lessons, all of the practical exercises, and you won't need to even register with your credit card. We just need your email address, send you the link, and you'll be good to go.
Yep, so that link has dropped. Carlos dropped it in YouTube. So you get a free trial, you get a free trial, you get a free trial. Everybody gets a free trial, 7 days. There's a lot of stuff you can do in that 7 days. So I've heard of people getting in there and whizzing through it, especially if they have some background in that stuff. They can get enough knowledge to go and sit for the exam. So please don't waste it. 7 days, and that's everything, right? All right, so we have a question that came in a little bit ago. It's regarding the number of scored and unscored questions on the exam. Are the 15 unscored questions in addition to the 50 questions that are included, or is it only 35 questions out of the 50 are scored?
It's exactly that. 35 out of the 50 are going to be scored, and 15 are going to be unscored. And I think personally that's quite a large ratio. I'm surprised it's so high, but I wonder if you would agree with me, Scott, that sometimes you go into an AWS exam and you've been studying and preparing, and you think you've covered all bases, but you can often see something that you think, 1 or 2 questions in there, you can think, oh my goodness, where did that question come from? I had no idea that was going to be an exam. And I think that when you see that, when you have that experience, I think that's when you've identified an unscored question. When you see a little surprise and you think, where did that come from? So left field. I think it's an unscored question. I'm just surprised there's 15 of them out of 50 is a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So I have another question. We got a few questions. Let's go ahead and just take care of those while we're at this point. Yep. We're good on time so far. Is the 20 minutes for each lab enough time in your opinion?
Absolutely. Yep, okay. Without doubt, enough time. I think also just the way that the AWS console is put together, it's very intuitive. You're working through the tasks. Often they'll ask you to do something and it's quite clear and it's quite easy to find it on the console. Even if you think, wow, I've never done this before, I think that you still stand a very good chance. And I honestly think a lot of people are going to find the practical exercises preferable to some of the questions.
Okay. We have a question from Twitch about to do the Azure 104 admin. Is it easy to move to AWS admin after that?
Ooh, I think it will give you a really good grounding generally in cloud. I think if you've got a general IT background anyway, I think starting with the solution architect would be a great place to start. Or, I mean, I wouldn't go straight into SysOps from that. I would personally recommend you start with solutions architect if you've not really used AWS before. But that general background in cloud will absolutely help you, because there's not a massive difference. It's mainly they name some of the services. Well, obviously they name some of the services completely differently. Some of their terminology is going to be different, but on the whole, the services are, they're robust, they're enterprise level services, and they're equivalent in many ways.
Okay, perfect. All right. If another question: if we already have completed all the AWS Associate certs and an AWS SA Pro certification, does it make sense to go for the new SysOps Associate exam?
Interesting. When you take the SA Pro, it automatically updates all of your recertifies all of your associate level certs, and that's the great thing about the SA Pro. If you ever find that one of your associate level certifications is running out and you're planning to do the SA Pro, it will automatically refresh all of those. I think as a kind of intellectual challenge, it could be a fun thing to do, to experience the practical lab element of it. I think it's a fun thing to do, but I don't think it's going to give you much of a, in terms of improving your CV or improving your job prospects, maybe not such a benefit. I would probably, if it was me, I might think, oh, maybe I'll do a specialty instead.
Okay. All right. We have a couple more questions, but I think we're going to have to move along and get into some of the other parts of this presentation here. We'll circle back and try to hit those questions at the end. Also, I will mention, for some odd reason, my video stream is having a few little glitches, so it's not your feed, it's on my side. And I either attribute it to a glitch in the matrix, which is probably most likely, or number two, poltergeists. So choose the reason for that as you will. It'll be like a little blue flash that pops up here and there. You should see the Rube Goldberg contraption I have trying to stream this to you live. Every time is an adventure, and every live stream we have some craziness that happens, and it's just not an ACG live stream until some disaster occurs. So that's just what we're going to chalk it up to. So moving right along, we're going to get into a sample question. All right, Faye, let's take us through your question strategy.
Okay, thank you. So I always try to go into these exams with a little strategy in mind, because sometimes these questions and answers, they can end up just confusing you or driving you crazy. So my strategy is to start off by reading the question, and then I try and establish exactly what is this question asking me, because some of these questions, they got a whole load of scenario information. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not all useful. So I try to work out, okay, what are the key words to this question? What are they actually looking for? What are they asking me for? Then the next thing I do is I review all the answers, and I try to eliminate the answers that are obviously incorrect. And sometimes there's some answers, they stand out to you immediately as that's definitely a red herring. It's not the right answer. So I try to keep in mind, just keep in my head, okay, which answers are definitely not correct. If I can write it down, I write it down. But I know that now we're in the world of doing online exams. It's not always easy to write things down. If you've got the facility to make notes within the software, sometimes I try and do that. But mainly, I just try and keep it in my head. Okay, that answer's incorrect. Disregard it. And then finally, I read the question again, and I try and select the best answer from the answers that I know are, contenders, possible contenders. So that is how I approach the questions. And we're going to do this together for the next 3 sample questions that we have.
All right.
Okay.
Everybody warm up your finger typing skills, because when we put these questions out there, we expect you to put an answer in. So how this is going to work is we're going to put the question up, we'll put the answers up. We'll give you about a minute to put your answers in. Just lock in your answers, YouTube chat, Twitch chat, and we'll see how we fare. And then after that, we're going to walk through in a way that either Faye or myself would approach these types of questions. So without further ado, Faye, why don't you take us to the first question?
Okie dokie. Question 1. So you need to centralize the collection of application logs like var, log, HTTP access log, and operating system logs like var log messages for all of your EC2 instances. How could you do this? So the first thing I try and do is identify the keywords. So we're trying to centralize our application logs, and we're using EC2 instances. So let's take a look at the possible answers. So answer A, from the CloudWatch console, enable log collection for each of the instances. Answer B, install the CloudWatch agent on your EC2 instances and configure it to send the required logs to CloudWatch. Answer C, from the EC2 console, enable log collection for all instances. And answer D, configure the logging agent on your EC2 instances and send the required logs to CloudWatch. So at this point, I think you're going to be given 1 minute to decide what the answer is. And when you're ready, please type A, B, C, or D into your chat.
YouTube is overwhelmingly B. Twitch is B as well.
Okay, thank you everyone.
It appears that the B's are winning on YouTube, B's are winning on Twitch. There are some D's in there, an A here and there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's go through the answers. So answer A, from the CloudWatch console, enable log collection for each of the instances. Well, straight away, you should know that it is not possible to enable log collection from within the CloudWatch console. So I would say for that reason, that one is a no. Answer B, you can answer B, install the CloudWatch agent on your EC2 instances, configure it to send the required logs to CloudWatch. Well, you can send the application logs to CloudWatch using the CloudWatch agent. So I think that's a pretty good answer. But let's see what the other answers. For now, I'm just going to give that a question mark. Answer C, from the EC2 console, enable log collection. Well, once again, it's not possible to enable this from inside the console, not even from the EC2 console. So I would say for that reason, that's a no. And then answer D, configure the logging agent. Well, there is no logging agent that can send logs to CloudWatch. It doesn't exist on EC2 instances. Sounds about right, but it's not the correct answer. And so for that reason, I'm going to go for the CloudWatch agent, and that is the correct answer. So everyone who got answer B, well done. That's a nice, easy one to warm you up.
Good job. Good job, everybody. All right. We got time for a quick question. Some folks have asked this kind of in different forms. Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. The question I have is, I've completed the essay and Dev Associates. How much more difficult would it be to prepare for the SysOps Administrator?
Okay, really good question. Luckily, having done the solution architect, I think that's probably the most difficult of the associate levels, because you're just starting out with AWS and just getting your hands dirty with the technology in a hands-on way. But the good news is that having done Solutions Architect, you've already got familiarity with most of the services that you're going to see in SysOps. I would say SysOps is more about having that kind of production support mentality, right? You know, how to support these systems, how to work out when something's gone wrong, how to monitor everything, how to make sure that everything has disaster recovery built in, you know, good security, and there's a cost optimization piece to it as well. So I would say that having done the Solution Architect, you're in a great place. Developer Associate is very much about DevOps tools, and you're not going to see that kind of thing very much in SysOps. I would say if you're comfortable and you like the hands-on element, I think that you're going to love SysOps. So I would say give it a go.
Okay. So what's the exam tip that we want to share?
So the exam tip that this question that we just did illustrates is that practical hands-on experience with AWS is essential, and that's what's going to really help you in the exam. Remember the details for these questions. You know, remember that it's the CloudWatch agent because you installed it as one of the practical exercises when you were preparing. So yeah, hands-on experience is paramount for this exam.
Okay. Very good. All right, let's go on to question 2. Well, folks, this question is my question. So I'm going to throw it up there, and I'm not going to narrate all the answers. You can read yourself. So, all right. This is a cloud formation question, and we got some cloud formation stuff in here. And your task is to drop a letter in the chat as to which response you think is the correct answer. And here are the answers. All right, thank you everybody that's put in an answer. Somebody said C to shining C. Lots of C's, some D's thrown in there. I saw an X. I'm not sure what that is, but that does bring me to an important exam tip. If you're not sure of a question, just chuck an answer in there, then flag it for follow-up later. Why chuck an answer in there? Because there's no penalization for answering incorrectly. So it's better just to take a chance, right? And as Faye said earlier on, a lot of times you can eliminate maybe 2 or 3 of the answers that are given because something's just not correct in them. So you don't have to necessarily know everything about everything when you take an AWS exam. You have to know enough to reach the passing criteria. But you also can help your chances by learning how to read those questions and kind of figure out what just doesn't fit right. And this question is a really good example of that. So if we look at this question, we're looking for cloud formation template stuff, so that immediately turns my brain into, okay, what do I know about cloud formation templates? And we're going to define an AMI, AMI, ID, however you say it. Don't get me started. Cache, router, router, seeder, cider, you know. And to use based on the region that we're deploying in. All right, so first off, I can say outputs. Well, outputs is how we spit stuff out of cloud formation templates. So we're not going to be defining any regions in the outputs section, right? Next, regions. Maybe, I haven't really heard of regions as part of a cloud formation template, but let's just keep it in there because kind of sounds like it may fit. Second, mappings. I most definitely know that there's a mapping section in the CloudFormation template. So I'm going to put a possible next to that one. Resources, well, those are just the things that we set up in the CloudFormation template. So that leaves us with regions and mappings. And so if I know that there's most definitely a mapping section in there, but I just don't remember anything about a region section in there, then I'm going to take my chances and I'm going to go with mapping. So that's a case where even if I didn't know the precise answer, process of elimination was able to help me kind of narrow down, at least to my chances were 50-50. And in this case, I would probably have leaned more towards mappings than regions because I knew that was a definite thing in there. So if I'm unsure of a question, I'm going to go ahead and chuck this answer in there. Maybe I'll flag it for later because in some cases, maybe something in an answer or a question you see further down in the exam kind of triggers something in your mind. And you say, oh yeah, I remember that. Just as a side, I was up for the CSA Pro recertification, and I ended up taking that as a remote proctored exam last week. Passed it, made a really good score on it, but the remote proctoring experience was interesting to say the least. So I'll be putting together a blog post on that to share with you my experiences in that kerfuffle, I guess you would call it. But anyway, that's how I would probably approach this question. So the exam tip that we would take away is typically you can eliminate at least 2 answers just because there's stuff that's just flat incorrect. So kind of having a broad understanding of what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. AWS is pretty notorious about putting in distractors. In my CSA Pro exam, I identified several questions where they inserted a service into one of the responses that you just don't use for what they were trying to use it. So that was a real easy elimination because I knew what that service did. That service certainly didn't fit there, so I could just get rid of that particular answer. So, okay. So we have a question from, not sure where it came from. Which is the most difficult, in your opinion, Faye, of the 3 associates exams?
Oh, I think it depends on your background. So my background previously to working at ACG was a solution architect. And for that reason, solutions architect was really easy for me because I understood the mentality of an architect. You know, why would you choose one service over another? All of that made perfect sense to me. However, if you've been working in like a Unix support or Linux support or like a kind of a SysOps type role, SysOps it will be very easy for you because you will understand what it means to be working in a production support team. And if you have been working as in DevOps, if you've done any development or you've done any DevOps, or even really if you've done SysOps and you've been working closely with developers, then the developer associate will be will make a lot of sense to you as well. I think if you've just got a general IT background, then I think solution architect, probably a pretty good one to start off with. And I think it also depends where your passion is as well. You know, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in the next, 2-3 years? What direction do you want to take your career in? Because I think the thing that interests you is going to be always the easiest thing.
All right. YouTube's asking, why does there seem to be a police light in your house? Yeah, that's what it kind of looks like. We talked about this earlier. It's either a glitch in the matrix, it's a poltergeist, or you don't know, it could be the police waiting for me right outside my door. I'm dangerous. All right, moving on to question 3. We got to hustle on this one so we can have time to include all the lovely videos and questions that you, our audience, are going to generate. So, moving right along, Faye, why don't you introduce this one?
Okay, question 3. Sorry, it's quite a long question with a bit of scenario. So your private EC2 instance needs to access an S3 bucket to read and write files. However, you've been told by the security architect that under no circumstances must this traffic leave the AWS network. Which of the following is a cost-effective and secure solution to ensure that the EC2 instance can access the S3 bucket securely? Okay, so that is our question. And I just highlighted the keywords that we've got the private EC2 instance. It needs to access S3, and we cannot send traffic outside the AWS network. So it can't go over the internet. It's got to stay within the AWS network. So let's take a look at our answers. And I'm going to leave you to read the answers yourself. Decide which one you like the best. And then you're going to get 1 minute to add your best answer into the chat.
So YouTube is pretty much overwhelmingly D. Twitch, same thing, D. Let's dig into it, Faye.
Okay, well, beginning with the first answer, answer A, configure a VPN gateway and then route your traffic through the VPN. Well, a VPN, as you know, provides a secure connection between your on-premises systems and your VPC. So it can't be used to provide a private connection between EC2 and S3. So for that reason, I would say that one is incorrect. Then answer B, use a NAT gateway and route all the traffic through the NAT gateway. Well, NAT gateway, as you know, is going to send traffic over the internet. So that is definitely a no-no for this scenario. So for that one, I would say that's a no. Then answer C, use Direct Connect to route the traffic securely. Well, it's not possible to use Direct Connect in this way. And of course, Direct Connect provides an alternative to using the internet, but it's used to connect to instances in your VPC from your own data center. It can't be used to give you access to S3. And then finally, the last one, use a VPC endpoint and specify that as a target for the route in your route table. Well, a VPC endpoint is going to allow you to privately connect instances in your VPC to the S3 bucket without using the internet. And it's actually using AWS private link under the hood to connect into S3, so the traffic never leaves Amazon's network. And for that reason, I'm going to say that one is the correct answer. But the thing about this question is that if you can eliminate the 3 incorrect answers, then even if you don't know what the VPC endpoint actually is and you haven't really used it much, you can eliminate the 3 incorrect answers and focus on the one that is correct. Oh, and there we are. That's the exam tip. Sometimes you can find the correct answer by identifying the wrong ones.
Okay, we got a couple questions. There are a few folks that are, I guess they're finding these questions skeptically easy. How close are these questions that we've gone through to real legitimate exam questions for this exam?
Well, we do try and make our exam questions similar to the kind of content that you are going to see in the exam. Sometimes what you see in the exam can be a little bit more wordy than we can present to you easily. So sometimes you might get a more elaborate scenario, but ultimately, you know, the test points, the testing topics and the testing points we try and make them as close to the exam as possible, so that, you know, if you're getting our exam questions right, when you see something similar to that in the exam, you're gonna know the correct answer.
All right, very good. Let's see here. Now we're ready for a demo. Why don't you introduce this, Faye?
Okay, so we are going to go into our lab demo, and full disclosure, this part is recorded so that we don't waste any of your time getting started. And you'll see in the demo that with the practical exercises, you get 3 or 4 different objectives to complete. And then once you've completed those objectives, you just sort of submit it. And this is actually from our real exam simulator. So you'll see exactly what it's like. I hope you enjoy it. So here we are in the practice exam. And you'll see here that first of all, there are 50 questions to answer. So you'll need to complete all of the questions first. So answer everything before submitting your questions. And then when you're ready, just hit submit. And at this point, we can move on to the labs. And just like in the real exam, once you've submitted the questions, you will not be able to go back and review them. So just make sure you're happy with all of your answers before you move on to the labs. So here is our very first exam lab. Here's the introduction with some high-level tasks. Down here we've got some background, so a little bit of background to the scenario. And then down here, these are the detailed objectives that you will need to complete before you submit your lab. So let's just take a look at the scenario. You work for a managed service provider and your team has just received a request from a new client. In the initial request, the client has asked you to create a highly available VPC containing 2 public and 2 private subnets. They've also requested a security group named Public SG, and that's going to permit HTTPS traffic, and a second security group named Private SG, which is going to allow all traffic from Public SG. And then for additional security and monitoring, the client would also like to send VPC flow logs to S3 to monitor all incoming and outgoing traffic. So that's the scenario, and then we have these 4 different objectives that we need to complete before we submit our lab. And then on this side of the screen, we have the credentials that we can use to log into the AWS console and complete all of these objectives. So we'll need to use these credentials and open a link in a new incognito window. So now I'm logged into the console, I've got my objectives on this side, and now I can just go ahead and complete the objectives. So first of all, we need to create our highly available VPC and call it Exam VPC. So let's head to Services. We'll scroll down to Networking and Content Delivery and select VPC. We'll go to Your VPCs and create VPC. We'll call it Exam VPC. And the CIDR range is going to be 10.20.0.0/16. And then the next thing we need to do is create 2 public and 2 private subnets within the VPC. So let's go ahead and create our VPC. And now we can create our subnets. So select Create Subnet, select our VPC. So now let's create our subnets, and we need to create 2 public and 2 private subnets in our VPC. So first of all, let's create the public subnets. We'll create our first public subnet and we'll give it a CIDR block from our CIDR range that we already defined. I'll give it 10.0.1.0/24. For the availability zone, these need to be highly available, so I am going to set a preference. And I'm going to select US East 1A for my first subnet. We'll add the next subnet under here as well. This will be my second public subnet. And I'm going to select US East 1B. Select another CIDR range. We'll create another CIDR block from our main CIDR range. Add another subnet, which is going to be the first of my private subnets. Availability zone, we'll select US East 1A. Select another CIDR block from our range. And we'll finally add our last subnet. And the availability zone is US East 1B. We'll specify a CIDR block from our main range. .20.4.0 and create subnet. So that is our 4 subnets created, and they are highly available across 2 different availability zones. So that is our first objective completed. So the second objective is to create a route table within your VPC named public RT, and it needs to contain the necessary routes for public connectivity. So in order to do that, we'll also need to create an internet gateway so that we can create a route out to the internet for our public subnet. So head to Internet Gateways. We'll create our internet gateway. I'm going to call it My Internet Gateway and create. Then we need to attach it to a VPC. Select our VPC and attach. And now we're good to go to configure our route table. So select Route Tables, create route table. It's going to be called pub RT. Select our VPC and create. And we need to configure our route for public connectivity. So edit routes, add route. The destination is going to be the internet, and the target is going to be our internet gateway. So select Internet Gateway, and it should find the internet gateway I just created. So now hit save, and that is my second objective completed. The next thing we need to do is create a couple of security groups. One called public SG, one called private SG, and public SG allows HTTPS traffic from anywhere. Private SG only allows traffic from public SG. Okay, so down here, we'll find security groups. We'll create a security group. Public SG. And this is going to allow HTTPS from anywhere. We'll add an inbound rule for HTTPS from anywhere. And create security group. And then we also need to create our private SG security group as well. So come to security groups, create security group. It's called private SG. It's going to allow all traffic from public SG. We'll add a rule. Select all traffic. Just make that page a little bit smaller so we can see it a bit better. And the source is going to be our public SG security group. So if I click in here and just type SG, it will identify our security groups. This one's our default security group, but I want to add this for our public SG security group. So select that and create security group. So that is hopefully our third objective completed. And then the last thing we need to do is enable logging of all IP traffic to a created S3 bucket. So we need to enable VPC flow logs, and we want to log all of the traffic to a bucket that's been created for us. So I'm going to head to Services, and I'm going to open S3 in a new tab. So from the S3 console, I can see that a bucket has been created for me, and I'm going to need to grab the ARN of that bucket because I want to enable VPC flow logs to send all my logs to this S3 bucket. So I'm going to grab that ARN, come back to my main console, come back to my VPC, select my VPC, and then under Actions, this is where I can create my flow log. Under Filter, I want to capture all traffic. Under Destination, I'm going to send the logs to S3. We need to provide the bucket ARN. I'll paste that in here. So that's our S3 ARN. And then I'm going to accept the rest of the defaults and create flow log. So that is my fourth objective, and that is all my objectives completed. So once I've finished, I'm ready to submit my lab. So if I scroll down, this is where I can select Submit Lab. So hit Submit Lab, and then once we've completed that lab, it will automatically move us on to the next lab. So that is our exam simulator. I really hope you enjoy using it.
That is a really cool feature. I am really impressed. The chat seems to be kind of split a bit on this new feature and this new hands-on type portion of the lab. Some people are saying that, well, in SysOps world, as somebody referred to it, they don't really work in ClickOps. My guess is they probably work in scripts and CLI and stuff like that. But on the other hand, I got to say that this is a huge step forward from demonstrating one's capability to use AWS than just answering some multiple choice questions. I really like the fact that you have to roll up your sleeves and get in there and do something and make something, which I think, as we all kind of agree, that's one of the best ways to learn, is get your hands dirty. So, fortunately, our platform has had that for a while, the sandboxes, and now they've been kind of incorporated into the learning process and the exam lab process. All right, let us go on to the next demo. Faye, you want to give us a little bit of a lead in for this?
Yep, sure. So the next one is going to be our challenge labs. And this is kind of a natural progression from the hands-on lab feature that we've had on our platform for a few years now, a couple of years. And with challenge labs, you've actually got the choice, and you'll see it in action, that you can either run the lab in guided mode, where you get a video telling you what to do step by step and sort of holding your hand all the way through. Or you can select a challenge mode, where you do it more like the exam experience. You're on your own. You've got a set of objectives to achieve. You're on your own, and once you're ready and you think you've completed everything, submit your lab, and then you'll get a score at the end. So it'll tell you, what did you do correctly and what did you do incorrectly, and we'll see that in action in the demo.
All right, let's.
So here I am back in the course, and we have a whole section dedicated to challenge labs. And these are practical labs that are going to help you prepare for the labs that you'll see in the exam. And you'll see we've got quite a few different challenge labs here. I'm just going to select the first one. Now, when completing these labs, you will have a choice of 2 different modes to choose from. So we've got guided mode, which includes guidance from one of our awesome instructors, showing you how to complete all of the objectives one by one. And we also have challenge mode, and this is what I wanted to show you. And this allows you to complete the lab objectives all by yourself, just as you would in the exam. And once you've finished and you submit the lab, you will receive a score to see how you did. So I'm going to select challenge mode and start the lab. So here's my introduction to the lab. A SysOps administrator has been tasked with verifying that new and existing buckets are properly configured with server-side encryption to meet company compliance standards. Any misconfigured buckets should be identified and automatically remediated. And we want to use AWS config to accomplish this task. Under prerequisites, it's just letting us know to leave all other settings as default unless specified otherwise. And here are our challenge objectives and our AWS credentials. So I've already logged into the AWS console using these credentials, and I'm good to go to begin my objectives. So it's telling us in the first objective to create an S3 bucket without server-side encryption enabled. So we'll head to services. I'm going to create an S3 bucket. Hit create bucket. I'll just call it my lab bucket and then some random numbers. We'll accept all the defaults. Server-side encryption is going to be disabled and create bucket. Next, it's asking us to create this AWS config rule. So I'm going to try and find config. I'm going to just search for it up here because it's the quickest way. There we go, select config. We need to do the one-click setup to get everything up and running with config. Just get rid of that welcome message. And we're creating an AWS config rule. So I'm going to come to rules, add rule, and we're using the AWS managed rule S3 bucket server-side encryption enabled. So we can search for that in here. There we are, that's the one to select. Hit next. We need to give it this specific name. I'm going to copy that so that I get the name correct. And we'll keep to the rest of the defaults. Hit next and add rule. So there we go, that's our second objective completed. And I'm actually not going to complete the third objective. I'm actually going to go ahead and submit my lab so that you can see that you get some scoring at the end of it. So once we've finished and we think we're happy with everything, I'll hit submit lab. Ready to submit? Yes. And there we go, we've completed the lab, but unfortunately we've failed on one of the objectives. So we only completed 2 out of 3 lab objectives, and it will actually give you an explanation down here of what you failed to complete. And if you didn't successfully complete everything, you can scroll down and redo the lab if you'd like. So that is challenge labs. I hope you have fun with them.
All right, that was pretty cool as well. So, got a question from YouTube, I think it is. On the exam, how do they score the labs? Do they record what you're doing and then send it off to somebody who just mind-numbingly reviews these videos all day? Find that hard to believe, but and are there partial credit? Is it an all or nothing type thing where you have to do everything perfectly and you have to name everything a predefined name that the question expects you to name it?
Yeah, good question. I believe the way that they're doing it is that they're actually querying the account, the account that they've given you in the exam to complete all the tasks, and they're actually going into that account and they're querying it and finding out, did you create an S3 bucket and you gave it the right name? Did you create the AWS config rule and did you give it the right name? And then on the third on that third objective, did we create what was it, the automatic remediation? Did we set up the automatic remediation correctly? So it's going in there and it's using the, I think it's using the AWS CLI to find out, okay, what's been configured in here? Do the services and the things that we asked you to create, have they been configured, and are they configured correctly? And that's how our own exam engine works on the back end. For the objectives, we ask you, for example, in the one I showed you about creating VPC, we asked, the question was, create the VPC, give it this name, give it this CIDR range, create a security group and give it this name, and give it this configuration. So we're on the back end, we're checking that account. Are those things created and configured in the way that we expect? One interesting thing to note is with these, you do get the partial scoring. So in that second demo, I only got two of the objectives correct. So I would, if I was in the exam and I saw a question like that in the exam, I would get some partial marks for getting some of that correct. But we don't know how they're actually scoring it. Is it equal on all the objectives? Probably not. Some of the objectives are more difficult than others. So I don't think that the scores are equal for each of the objectives.
Okay. We had a question about, so if I have a typo in a resource name, does that just make the whole question wrong or that objective wrong?
I expect so, yes, because how else is AWS going to score these exams? You know, how are they going to score it if they're not searching for, you know, is there a security group with this name and has it got this configuration? It's going to make it very difficult for them to do the scoring if we don't use the correct name for the resources. So if I would do exactly what the question is asking you, and I would even, if you can, cut and paste the resource names if you can do that. I know sometimes these exam testing engines aren't brilliant for cutting and pasting. I would, before you submit the lab, just double check before that you've completed every single objective exactly how they've asked you for it, because you don't want to lose marks for a silly mistake like a spelling mistake.
Yeah, I guess the good news is we have a lot of time on the exam. So, okay, very good. We got a few other questions. We're going to try to answer some. Let's see here. How close is this exam experience to? Well, let me rephrase that. What we saw in both of those demos, the first demo, for example, how close is that from a look and feel standpoint to the actual exam?
We've tried to make it as close as possible, the look and feel, in terms of you're going to get a set of questions, you're going to get access to an AWS account, and you've got to just go through the questions. You're not going to get any diagrams or anything really to help you. You won't even in the exam get access to the full console. You won't get access to everything in the console. You're only going to get access to what you need. So we tried to make it as close as possible and not give you anything extra, not give you any hints or anything else. And we want you to go into the exam and feel confident that you know, we haven't made it easy for you.
So you're saying I can't go while I'm taking my exam, go spin up a few GPU instances and mine some crypto?
No, definitely not. I hope you can't. Don't try. Okay. Don't waste your time doing that.
You got 3 hours. Come on. What's the biggest GPU that I can? It's one of those, what, $30 an hour jobbies? I forget. But let's see here. Question is, do all the exams have these hands-on labs, or is it just this one?
Not yet, but I don't see why not. I don't see why they wouldn't seek to introduce this into developer associate. That would be a really good candidate. Probably machine learning as well would be a great candidate. Security. I would hope, or anticipate that they're going to be rolling out this feature to further exams. It just makes sense, but nothing's been announced, and we're not privy to any insider information. We find out when you find out.
Okay, so one last question. I mean, we have a lot of good questions, but we're kind of running out of time. Let's answer this question. Then I'm going to give you maybe an idea about how you can ask these questions get an answer rather than having to just wait for one of these live streams to happen. Last question we'll answer here is, so the hands-on portion of the exam, does it allow for multiple ways of doing tasks?
Yes, I believe so. So you got the choice to either do it in the console like we saw, or you can also use the command line as well.
Okay.
Using the Cloud Shell. So, if you haven't already used the Cloud Shell, it's a really brilliant feature of the console. You just, I know Google's had it for ages, but AWS only introduced it, I think, in the last year or so. It's a way to use the AWS CLI without installing a CLI on your local machine. You just use the Cloud Shell from it's the top kind of right-hand side on the console, and it will give you, basically interactive CLI, and you can type all the AWS CLI commands in there as you normally would.
Okay, so for all you console haters that live and die by the CLI, that was almost poetic, wasn't it? So we do have the CLI that you can use. So if you just, hate the console, can't stand mouse clicking, just drop down that little console or the little CLI and just start typing your AWS commands right there. So what I wanted to mention was, you might not know it, but we have a Discord server. And there's a lot of like-minded people out there on that Discord server that have been through this exam, that have been through other exams, that are in various stages of preparing for their cloud journey and their AWS certification journey. And that's a really good source of information if you have questions about what's it like to take the exam, what's it like to take a proctored exam, stuff like that. So I would really encourage you to, if you haven't signed up already, go out and visit our Discord server, sign up. And every so often, I think we're going to try them on a more monthly cadence now, we do office hours. So you'll have various training architects, instructors will drop into a special channel on Discord, and we may do video, may do audio. We just did one last week with Lars Klint, myself, and Matthias, and it was pretty fun. So if you have questions about your certifications and you want to talk to one of us about that, watch out for those office hours that are going to be cropping up on Discord. But certainly don't wait for that. We have a lot of other instructors that hang out on Discord, and it's a pretty good community of folks that are kind of just like you, trying to figure out how do they further their personal objectives, their technical objectives, their career progression, so forth and so on. So with that, I think I'm going to bring this live stream to a close. Thank you very much for everybody who joined in. This live stream is going to be archived on our YouTube channel. It's going to be available anytime on demand if you want to go back and take a look. I would definitely also encourage you to sign up for that 7-day free trial. You can do a lot of stuff in 7 days, and it's free, totally free. So any parting words, Faye?
Oh, just to say thank you to everyone for your participation and for joining us and for all your great questions. And if anyone does take up the 7-day free trial, and if you pass your exam, in fact, if you take the exam and pass it, and if you fail it, I want to hear about it. So please do get in touch and let us know how you get on. And I wish you all the best of luck.
All right, thank you. Everybody, stay safe, take care of one another, and keep being awesome, Cloud Gurus.